Thank you, David Asman. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our government has failed us. Our elected lawmakers have betrayed us once again. And now there is only one solution. Vote them all out. They gotta go. In a vote of 67 to 28, the Senate today passed a budget that would land any of us in prison. It increases federal spending by $320 billion over the next 2 years, allows unfettered government borrowing the entire time. In other words, spending money we don't even have. And while it will prevent another government shutdown, it does nothing to stop the government's spiraling debt and ballooning deficit. Forbes magazine reports the deficit could skyrocket to twice as much as under President Obama. That's not good. You need more proof this budget sucks wiener balls? Ask Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer why they agree on it. Take it away, boys.
This is the agreement the administration has negotiated. This is the deal the House has passed. This is the deal President Trump is waiting and eager to sign into law.
This legislation lays the groundwork to avoid another government shutdown and will preserve the full faith and credit of the United States.
No full faith and credit. I'm Chuck Schumer. Good Lord. President Trump loves it too, tweeting, quote, budget deal is phenomenal for our great military, our vets, and jobs, jobs, jobs. 2-year deal gets us past the election. Go for it, Republicans. There's always plenty of time to cut when you're in bankruptcy. Remember back in 2016 when President Trump campaigned for fiscal responsibility when he was just a candidate? Yeah, so much for that promise. Fortunately, we still have a handful of sane lawmakers, among them Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Take it away.
This may well be the most fiscally irresponsible thing we've done in the history of the United States. What is irresponsible is recklessly indenturing our children and our grandchildren. What is irresponsible is binding our kids to this massive burden of debt. What is irresponsible is a Congress that believes they are Santa Claus and that they can be everything to everyone and everything is free.
That's too much ever. Senator Paul was among 23 Republicans who voted no on this turkey, and rightly so. So why didn't more rational senators join him? Let's meet tonight's panel. We've got Trump 2020 Advisory Board member and constitutional attorney Jenna Rives, and former advisor to the Hillary Clinton campaign and Blueprint Strategy founder and CEO Antoine Seawright, and townhall.com editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich. She's one of the smartest people I know. There's absolutely no way you took a look at these numbers and went, yep, that squares up right there.
No, this budget is an abomination.
Yes.
When you look at the total number of the amount of money that the federal government is taking in, $4.7 trillion we're spending. That's the budget.
Yeah.
We are borrowing 20%, $1 trillion just for this budget, which is insane. Donald Trump is trying to sell this by saying this is good for the military. That may be true, but it's horrible for the country. It's horrible for future generations. On the Democratic side, every presidential candidate is proposing that we spend more on things like Medicare for all and social programs, when that is actually what is driving these deficits and the debt. And nobody seems to be willing to be dealing with it. And as Rand Paul said, this is the death of the Tea Party. A lot of people in Congress who are still there today ran on fiscal responsibility. And the president has kept a lot of promises, but fiscal responsibility when it comes to this budget is not one of them.
Katie, debts and deficits have increased under the Republican
That's
leadership.
what I'm saying.
No, but you talked about Democrats. It's increased under Republican leadership. Not every presidential candidate is for Medicare for all. I just want to clear those two things. But
yes, they are.
They're all for universal health care, and they're all for massive spending programs, even if they're not as progressive as Bernie and Liz
But as each one of them said, they offset it with increasing taxes on the wealthy in this country.
And the offsets.
Okay, and I understand that, and those are good intentions, but they're not realistic. And unfortunately, the offsets that come with Elizabeth Warren's unconstitutional wealth tax, that'll be overturned by the courts, number one. And number two, even if you generated all the money they promised that we're going to, it would never be enough to offset that spending.
You want to talk about what's real and what's not in your opening? You said what the president campaigned on and what reality is. So we know the primary. We know the campaign
Barack
season.
Obama campaigned on closing Gitmo.
We know the campaign season is a thought, a place of ideas. But there's two bright spots about this deal. One, it's the first time in a long time I've seen Republicans and Democrats agree on something something in
No,
Washington.
we knew that. Okay, so
terrible.
by the way, that there were those of us who were not necessarily soothsayers, just really basic analysts who looked at the landscape, especially when the Democrats took over the House, and we went, this is god-awful because there's not going to be an impasse. They're going to find the ultimate political salve, and that is spending money, and it's something they're all addicted to.
And isn't it so sad that the only bipartisan thing that everybody can come together on in Congress is something that's actually really detrimental to the country? This is so sad, and none of us on this panel should be having any partisan
It's like
attitude
having
toward
fat
that.
camp in a bakery.
Can I ask the Trump
ridiculous.
Advisory Board member
So,
one question
and-
on this panel? When the Republicans passed the, I call it tax scam, most people do,
No, they don't.
No, they don't, actually. No, they don't.
last year, and we
Maybe they do according to your talking
knew
points.
the debt and deficit, what it would do long term. Did
Antoine,
you or
can you
anyone
set
else say anything about
aside-
it?
Can't
Did
you-
you or anyone else say anything about what it would
You're
do for the debt
pivoting
and
to a
deficit?
different
I'm asking you
point.
a question. I just asked you a
This
specific
particular thing
It's the
is
same
not
damn thing,
I will,
Jenna.
okay, but I will
and
address
I
that.
would encourage.
Me, I said it the whole time. I did pick me.
Okay.
Because I said, as a mantra, cut taxes, cut spending, let the economy grow.
All I'm saying is, let's not conveniently pick
here's the
battles, and
issue.
let's call balls and strikes every along the way.
Okay,
This is
we
the
can
issue.
umpire all day long. We got balls swinging all over the place.
Yeah.
We're going to let Katie Pavlich take a whack
The
at the
issue
pinata.
is that the government is taking in more money than it ever has before, and it is now spending more money than ever before.
Yes.
And despite how much you tax them, unless you cut spending and get a hold on some kind of fiscal program and reform Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, Democrats want to add in more programs like that when they are already insolvent and they don't want to deal with the problem.
Y'all gonna make me
There is
jump out of my
nothing-
chair.
I mean,
You're missing
the
my damn point on this
government
panel
is
tonight.
not-
No, you
The
can
point-
revenue
I'm not
generating
misdirecting.
institution.
You
I'm
can
good.
misdirect all you want.
I'm not misdirecting. What I'm saying
but
is we
what
can't
she's
pick it
saying
out when
is
it's
the
convenient.
truth. If you don't have the receipts, you can't have the expenditure.
Kennedy, I am
Antoine,
not
creating
disagreeing with that.
controversy
I'm just saying
just
let's
for
not pick it at
deficit
times of
is
convenience.
not helpful.
Yeah.
Every member of the Republican Party voted for the tax scam when we knew what it was
not
going
a
to do
tax scam.
long
It's
term.
not
No,
a tax
tax cuts are great, and Democrats are the ones who said we should take those individual tax cuts and make those permanent.
I did not hear
And
one
that's a great
Republican
idea.
talk about debt and deficit when that tax bill passed.
The government is not
No, you
entitled to
actually
your
did
tax
have
money.
several people
Yes.
talking.
Like the
about it.
government
voted
takes
for
it, but the government is not entitled to taking in more money because the government officials can't control the spending of money that is earned by individual private people and private
And you're also completely pivoting from the point that every sane person should be rejecting this fiscally irresponsible bill.
And
So you're
every
saying- so you're saying
fiscally
your president
irresponsible
is not
idea.
saying?
So I'm saying that
You saying he's
nobody.
not saying?
That's not at all what I said, Antoine. I'm saying
what did you
that
say?
someone. I'm saying that
He is
Congress.
embracing something that is fiscally
Congress.
very
He is
irresponsible.
embracing it, sir.
Congress is not every
Yeah.
person
He's
who
not
voted
in
for
the
that.
You know what, though?
He
Tip the
hasn't
iceberg
signed the bill
compared to what
He
your
is
friends
going
at
to sign it.
Democrats
Might.
are
I would hope
putting
he doesn't.
forward in these crazy debates. And we're going to talk about James Comey right now because everyone's got to bring the blood pressure down. Talk about one of the most boring people on earth. The DOJ is letting Lion James Comey slip past the prison shackles. Inspector General Michael Horowitz's long-awaited report expected at any moment. We need to boil hot water and get towels because this baby's getting born. Sources in the DOJ say Horowitz was not able to nail the former FBI director for leaking classified memos to the press. Reason being, the memos weren't marked as confidential until after Comey released them. That doesn't matter because he can author confidential material even if it's not marked as confidential. All right, even though it appears Comey is off the hook for now, the IG will still release the report, blasting him for stealing the memos in the first place and using an insecure email account. With so much damning accusations on the way, will Congress really let Comey off the hook? Katie, hasn't he already gotten away with too much?
He had these memos at his house. So when he was fired by the president, FBI agents had to go to his house to get these confidential memos, and then he lost 2 of them.
Yeah, he's like,
so
there were
what are
2
the
other
rules?
ones?
You know, if it's not okay for if it's not okay for David Petraeus to have classified confidential information in a drawer at his house, then why is it okay for James
He's
Comey?
still
Is
rotting
this
in
the new
Rikers prison.
standard? Right? Is this the new standard for handling
Might not be
classified
true.
information?
As most people on this panel know, I'm not a fan of James Comey because
I don't blame you. You worked for Hillary.
He's part of the reason.
He turfed her candidacy.
He's part of the reason why she is not the president of the United States. I
mean, that man likability.
The second thing is, I just find it so fascinating. And of course, the two ladies on the panel are going to say I'm pivoting. I'm so fascinated by the idea that you all want to conveniently call out what you view as bad and corruption, but yet this administration is overflowing.
IG called it out, not me.
That's basically an HR
this
report.
administration is overflowing with corruption from the son-in-law to the man who occupies the White House to
Different
cabinet secretary.
subject.
But
Yes.
yet you refuse to want to acknowledge that, and that's all I'm saying about
So, do you think we should have a special counsel that drags on for 2 more years, dealing with the deep staters like James Comey, who were working diligently and furiously to secure the presidency of Hillary Clinton, even though she was a corrupt
Did you hear
and
what I said a few
unlikable
seconds
candidate?
ago? I said, Kennedy, that I'm no fan of Comey because I believe he's
So
part of the
the
reason
answer is
why
yes.
he cost Hillary Clinton the election.
But before we let Antoine just filibuster this whole segment, let's look at what AG Barr is actually doing here. Because even though a lot of us are going to say, you know, that there's not equal protection and people are going to get very upset, and I think rightly so, because there is a lot of evidence here. I think that
Why didn't Barr push to have him prosecuted?
Well, and I think that that's a very interesting point because they said that there wasn't sufficient evidence to gain a conviction. And so even though the IG's report is basically an HR report from a legal standpoint, Bill Barr knows what he's doing. He knows what he can and can't prosecute, and there is equal protection. And I think that in terms of what Bill Barr is doing here,
I think you should throw the book at him.
Well, and you know what? He shouldn't throw the book at him just for political advantage, and he's not doing that.
He should throw the book at him because he's corrupt, unethical,
and he admitted to leaking confidential information to the press.
Isn't criminally prosecutable.
He's a weenus.
So if there's other things that come out for the IG report,
right here.
then he can prosecute him. But on this one, Bill Barr is being the Attorney General. He is not looking at whether there's a D or R after your name. He's looking at the evidence, and I respect him for that.
Conveniently.
So do you think James Comey should be prosecuted or not?
I'll let the
Yes or
Republicans
no?
decide. You all are in charge of the government.
All right, got it.
Do you think the president should be prosecuted? Yes
Based
or
on
no?
the evidence, no, because there is none.
I think that
I think you're crazy
I think
as hell.
that Robert Mueller.
Did you read the report? I think what is happening.
Did you see the hearing?
Okay, listen, I saw the hearing.
Yeah,
I felt bad
really
for Bob
bad.
Mueller.
Really
I didn't
sad.
come out of that hearing going, wow, what wherewithal.
Obstruction
This
of
guy was like,
justice.
what?
Lawyer,
On what page?
obstruction of
Oh, I'm
justice.
sorry. Can you repeat the
I don't-
question? I can't hear you.
Kenny, he's a
Is this thing on?
decorated
Where are my
Marine
glasses?
hero.
Yes, I know that.
He's a
I
decorated
understand.
Marine.
I refer you
And-
to the report.
And we're gonna
The
we're
10
gonna get
cases
we're
of
gonna get into
obstruction of
impeachment.
justice?
Okay. Yeah, that's I'll send you 10 cases of orange juice. We can have some mimosas.
Send vodka with it and they'll be fine.
You got it. They're coming back a little later, but first we're going to talk about Joe Biden needing a solid performance last night after a poor showing in the first debate. With 9 other candidates on stage, they were swinging at it. Antoine.
She's not running.
Raise taxes to achieve that. In fact, raising taxes leads to more of that.
Yes, more tax avoidance. You're absolutely right.
There's a couple pieces in some of their plans, mostly I think Amy Klobuchar, that make sort of sense. Like there is Klobuchar.
I thought that was an interesting writer I hadn't heard of.
There's so many weird last names that I'm losing track of it.
Kamala Klobuchar.
Well, she wants to address the issue where a lot of these private equity guys are paying a lower tax rate than an average person. That is a loophole in the tax code.
Sure.
And if they want to focus on that, and it leads to wealth inequality on some level.
I think we need to do Herman Cain's 999.
But there's other.
Stop screwing around. Let's go to it.
999.
That's right.
Well, he wants to go to 70% top brass. That is almost 99%.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's what he heard in the.
Oh, God. Jonas, it's exhausting. Thank goodness you're making sense of it all. You're a good person. And a genius. Only geniuses on this show. Stable geniuses. All right, let's switch gears from all the tall commies to fat commies. Filmmaker Michael Moore had a hot take after the debate last night, claiming he knows the perfect person to beat Trump in 2020. Watch this.
If the election were held today, there is one person that would crush Trump, and she hasn't announced yet. And her last name rhymes with Obama. In fact, it is Obama. Michelle Obama. Everybody watching this right now knows she is a beloved American, and she would go in there and she would beat him. She would beat him in the debates. He wouldn't be able to bully her. He wouldn't be able to nickname her.
God, if I saw him in the subway rattling a cup, I would probably call child services. He looks sickly. He was one of the few lefties in 2016 who predicted that President Trump would defeat Hillary Clinton because of the forgotten electorate that establishment politicians had turned their backs on. Is he right again this time around? The party panel is back. Jenna Rives, Antoine C. Wright, and Katie Pavlich. Welcome back, everyone. I will start with you. Michelle Obama. If I were a Democrat, I would love that idea. She's got incredible name recognition. She is very, very well branded. She reaches across gender and socioeconomic lines, and people really do have a great deal of respect and admiration for her. It's not a horrible idea, is it?
It's not a horrible idea to get somebody from the Democratic Party that's actually reasonable and actually has something to say other than just simply Trump hating. I mean, when we saw the Democratic debates, I was sitting there going, okay, free healthcare, free public education, free everything, and only law enforcement can have guns. That's like the Democrats' definition of utopia. The only place where that actually exists currently is prison. So they need someone actually reasonable to enter, and whether that's Michelle Obama, whether that's someone else, or Joe Biden.
I would make the argument that I don't think Michael Moore is too far off base. Antoine.
She's not running. She is focused on her private life. She has a.
I don't blame her, but think about the positives, though.
Sure.
You know, the way that she packages her own life story, it inspires people to want to do well in their lives, as opposed to businesses are evil, health insurance companies are evil, and the only good tool in your life will be the tool of government, which is blatantly false.
Two things. I'm old enough to remember when people were having those same conversations about my friend Hillary Clinton. And once you cross the line from being a citizen to a candidate.
And then they stopped liking her in 1993 and stopped having those conversations.
The ball game is different.
Yeah, and she was never a warm, likable person.
And I think that the First Lady will play a tremendous role in how we mold and shape not only who our next candidate will be, but who the next president
I
of the
think
United
she's
States
better than
will be.
Oprah. I think she has a better grasp of law and policy, and she's not as full of herself.
The oil and water.
Why aren't the Obamas backing Biden up on anything that he's being attacked
that's a good question.
I mean, after everything that he's been through,
The president-
why isn't Barack Obama giving some kind of defense about the civil rights issues? Joe Biden a racist? I mean, the quietness is either Joe Biden's a bad candidate and Obama doesn't endorse him, or Barack Obama is a pretty calculated political guy and doesn't want to be on a losing side of history when it comes to running against Donald Trump.
Especially when his legacy is being so attacked from everyone else.
Antoine?
I think it's pretty clear that the president made a pledge, as is the 42nd president, that they're going to stay out of the primary process, which is fair game, because when you're the former president, you have friends in all places. And the one thing about every candidate, with the exception of maybe one or two, Barack has been a friend, a personal friend, and a champion for them.
I will say this, though. He's horrible at picking other candidates. Good at getting himself elected, really bad at picking other candidates. Like,
I don't think he can control. I don't think he can control the environment.
No, he can't. But you can control who you pick and who you put your weight behind.
But you don't have to endorse Biden.
Because they're that good. We're still talking. That's how much fun it is.
Exactly.
More than half of House Democrats now defying the wishes of their dear leader, Nancy Pelosi, jumping on the impeachment wagon. But will that wagon end up driving over the party cliff come 2020? No one knows. That's what makes it so exciting. We'll talk about it next. No, it wasn't dun 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 dun. You know that. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she's about to be under pressure. Yeah, over half of House Democrats now support opening an impeachment inquiry into the president's actions. Florida Congressman Ted Deutsch tipped the scale, announcing his support this morning. Oh, Ted. And of course, the 2020 Dems are all jumping on the bandwagon to make removing them from the job they want much easier. At last night's debate, presidential candidate Julian Castro argued fiercely in favor of it. Watch.
I think that folks are making a mistake by not pursuing impeachment. The Mueller report clearly details that he deserves it. If they don't impeach him, is he going to say, you see, the Democrats didn't go after me on impeachment, and you know why? Because I didn't do anything wrong.
And then when the Senate acquits him, he'll be like, yeah, they shouldn't have impeached me because I didn't do anything wrong. All right, is there any chance this is a winning strategy for Democrats in Congress? And on the campaign trail, let's break it down with the party panel. Jenna, Antoine, and Katie. Antoine, of course, I will go to you first.
Yeah, Pelosi knows how to count.
Yes.
And she understands the magic number in Congress, 218. We have frontliners, over 20-some-odd frontliners that won in places that Donald Trump won in 16.
Yes.
We won in 18.
She really is protective of those moderates, isn't she?
Well, it's just frontliners. And what she understands is that her responsibility is not individuals, but it's about bringing back the majority, because you can't win if you don't govern.
So Katie, how do you tackle the loudest people in the party who are calling for this? You know, from Jerry Nadler to the squad. They're not going to stop because Nancy Pelosi is like, hey, guys, bad move.
Right.
Go back and watch 1998. How'd that turn out for everyone?
And that's been her struggle. I mean, even after Mueller's awful testimony, she still had to kind of walk this line of doing this press conference with Jerry Nadler and saying that they will still pursue the facts and the evidence and see where things come down. When Jerry Nadler is trying to say they're going to continue the investigation in August, right? So keeping them together to keep the majority is going to be hard for her.
And what nobody is actually talking about is that there actually is a constitution out here that lays out a process that you can't just impeach a president because you don't like him, when clearly there is an insufficient legal basis. Any of the Democrats who are actually for this are completely
let me just say this, and I want you to respond to this. After I make my point, then you can make your point, because I'm the pretty princess right now. Just for a second, though. I really wish that Robert Mueller would have pressed charges. I really do, because it would have given... It has created so much more chaos and murkiness around questions that don't have a cut and dried answer. And at least we could have pushed it to get judicial clarity. And I think that would have been a benefit to anyone who seeks the highest office. Go ahead.
Two things. There's a difference between an impeachment inquiry and the down the road of impeachment.
Yes, I know.
So I know.
They want to make it seem like impeachment so they can say he was impeachment inquiry.
But there's just two different things. They're two different things, and then the Republicans somehow want to try to merge them together. That's number two.
It's also like a little bit pregnant.
Number two, when you talk about reasonings to go down the road, there were 10 examples.
Sure, I understand that.
In the report.
Mueller should have said, hey, I can't indict him, but if I could, I would absolutely, instead of I didn't exonerate him. Those are two vastly different things, and you know that. You know that.
Mueller should have said very clearly there is insufficient evidence based on the legal standard. He left that up to the AG, who very clearly said as a matter of law.
Yes, because he knew what Trump's AG would do. And if you felt so strongly about it, and if you felt that he had violated the law and had obstructed the process, that's when you stand up and go, here's what I would do to impeach him. I am the special counsel.
Look, we can debate the details of what Mueller did or did not do, which are all very important. But when it comes to the politics of this, the far left Democrats who are continuing to push this impeachment line are getting phone calls from their very blue districts about doing this. The moderates are not getting those phone calls, and the independents that Democrats need to win, not just in the presidential race, but to keep the House in 2018, are very much against
impeachment. And the polling shows that.
Right.
The polling
so that's why Nancy Pelosi's holding the line.
Nancy Pelosi's math is serving her well. She seems to be one of the few people in Washington, D.C. that actually has a political instinct in her body. All right, I know you want to say more, but we can't, because we got to go. And to thank you all, Katie, Antoine, and Jenna.